So we're ready to go?
Well, I think so, yeah.
All right. Well, hi there, folks. My name is Tim, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. I don't really know what for. I don't really know what it's called. We haven't come up with a decisive name yet. We did have a name for what we wanted this to be, and then we hummed and hawed and decided it just didn't work. So we're probably going to be trying to come up with the name a little bit on the fly today, or perhaps in conversations with one another later. But maybe we'll start with an introduction to who the three of us are, how we came together, and what our hopes and our plans and our vision for this time is for these conversations and what they are. So I'm going to invite the first person I see on my screen, who's Tyler, on the screen. So I'm going to invite Tyler to say a little bit about himself and who he is, where he comes from, and then we'll go down to Gwen, and she can say a little bit about herself, who she is, where she comes from. Then I'll talk about myself, and then we'll have a bit of a short conversation around why we're here, how we came to be here, and what we hope to get out of this, and what we hope to offer out of this. So with that, Tyler, please.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Tyler. I'm a husband and a father, and I'm a Lutheran pastor. I serve at Gloria Dei Lutheran Church in the Charleswood neighborhood of Winnipeg. What brought me here? Well, the three of us have been working together at kind of an ecumenical campus ministry venture at U of W here in Winnipeg for, I think, a couple of years now. It's been sort of a off and on, trying different things kind of venture, and it excites me a lot because I like the ecumenical nature of it. I like the deep conversations that we've been having amongst ourselves, but also with some students and faculty. And part of my hope for this podcast is that we can engage some of that conversation that we've been enjoying over beer a lot of the time, sometimes in the university hallways, but that this might be able to be a way to reach other folks and maybe give people a taste of what we sort of get a charge out of discussing, and then maybe even invite people on board too. We'll see. That's a little bit about.
Just to clarify quickly, that's not beer in the university hallways. We're not walking around campus with a beer in our hands, but we'll separate those two for everyone.
Good
so they don't say, oh, it's those clergy coming again.
That's right.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler. And Gwen, could you say a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So my name is Gwen, and I am an Anglican priest. The church that I am rector at is in the west central neighborhood of Winnipeg, so downtown area. I should say that I'm a single parent and live in the same neighborhood. Parent of one and with too many cats, way too many cats. We first got meeting together because on campuses, I think there's a definite void, but it's not just on campuses. I think it's also in the culture, and it's in church culture, that there's a void of ways of engaging with faith that are really meaningful and honest and easy to access. And so we first got together, I think, trying to offer a little bit of that on campus. And I personally got a lot out of getting together and talking with you two, whether that was at the pub or on campus. And I look forward to more of that. Honesty, theology.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Gwen. And my name is Tim. I'm also from Winnipeg. Well, not from. I live in Winnipeg with my family, and I'm a United Church of Canada minister, and I'm at a church in the West Broadway neighborhood, Young United Church in the West Broadway neighborhood. I've been serving there for 5 years now, I think. And yeah, that was, the conversation started years ago, humming and hawing. Had separate conversations with Gwen and Tyler, and somehow the three of us got together. I can't remember how. It did all start out of this belief that I had, and echoing a bit of what you said, Gwen, that there is something missing, and in the world, and churches could be filling that void. I genuinely believe churches could be filling that void, but we're too preoccupied with other things instead of filling this void. And I struggle even naming what this void is, because there's something so amorphous about, I guess that's why it's a void, in terms of conversation, in terms of encountering sacredness in the world, whatever we name that, and how we do it. We just don't know how to do that anymore. And so starting at the university campus, I know I look at people who are young folks who are late teens, early 20s, really trying to figure out their lives and asking these huge questions, and there isn't a place to ask those questions as perhaps there might once have been. Though perhaps once upon a time it would have been a place to ask those questions and someone would tell you the answers. So maybe it's just as good a thing that they're not asked as well. But yeah, so that it started with that idea, and then I did realize, yeah, no, this isn't just people in their late teens and early 20s. These are conversations that everyone is asking and humming and hawing about and wondering about, and so that's why I'm glad to be a part of this, to ask those big questions and come away not with answers, but with my curiosity stoked even more, and maybe find something sacred in that curiosity itself. So that's why I'm here, and that's who I am. Do you folks have a sense of what we'll be doing? We've spoken about it amongst ourselves, but maybe we can talk about it for anyone who's listening here today.
I'm aware of where I come from in terms of my own privilege, and that extends in some ways into the church life and the community with whom I serve. And I speak in broad terms that way, to, yes, the local community, but also just the national church even, and the regional bodies that make up the national church. Lutherans themselves, by and large, have a lot of privilege. Just to use myself as an example, I mean, I'm male, I'm white, heterosexual, able-bodied. All these things sort of contribute to things that have become barriers, I think, in our church and our ability to reach out. And I think that talking about that and engaging that in meaningful ways and inviting conversation with and just open ears to other experiences is important. And so I see that as presenting issues and the kinds of things that we might be talking about on this podcast going forward.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things we've talked about that have come up that I look forward to discussing further and more deeply. The ideas of what we might talk about, including things like, what does it mean to be, as Tyler was suggesting, a representative, a white representative of a historically dominant religion, and how do we hold that up with the life that we find within it? How do we find the treasure and get rid of the garbage, right? And I'm interested to hear from both of you, your experiences of that, and how you ended up in your denomination, say, and not a Unitarian or not a person of religion at all. But so those questions, but also other questions around issues like racism, like mental health, questions around theological questions on sex, sexuality, where do we find meaning? What are practices that are helpful for us? I think all these things are things I'm really interested to hear how you two, because I know a bit about you, and I know that you're both people that seek to find in your own lives and offer in your work what is real, what is life-giving, what is just in the circumstances we find ourselves in the world we're in, and in the faith context we're serving in. I think there's a lot of meaning and really interesting conversations to be had there.
Curiosity is what's motivating me here. And I think it motivates a lot of people when we have these conversations about faith. Everyone wants to talk about religion and faith and meaning and death and sex and, you know, all these things. Everyone wants to talk about it. Sometimes they want to talk about them angrily. Sometimes they want to talk about them viscerally. But sometimes they want to talk about them with enjoyment and delight, you know, but everyone I think there's a deep-seated curiosity around all of these big questions. And I think you named it there, Gwen, that you want to hear what we have to say. I want to hear what you two have to say. And my hope is that anyone who might be listening doesn't come away with answers, but finds at least a sense of solidarity in asking the questions, in that holy curiosity that I think we all have, and just enjoy asking the questions themselves, as I certainly enjoy asking them, and then hearing what others have to say, and then, you know, spouting in with my 2 cents. I think we all enjoy that too. But yeah, that's really at the core of why I think I'm doing this, and why where I see it going. So we're done. Great. Yeah. I mean, are there any other thoughts there, or any other? Gwen, you named a few topics that we might hit on. You named, what were some of the topics that you named there, Gwen? Because I want to highlight them and echo them. You said race.
Well,
you said
justice issue topics,
yeah.
like race. I mean, you could say almost any topic is a justice topic, but yeah, race and sexuality. I love it.
Those are the big two.
No, but well, and like, who really is God? What do we? I mean, we have our traditions, right? We have what our traditions give us about God and about who we are and about how life is, but those traditions have tended to be used in particular ways, and if we set the tradition aside and think about what is my experience with this, that gives us a lot more that we're working with. And so I'm interested in looking at, say, the question of sexuality, not with, well, what does this chapter and verse say about it? What does this say, you know, but what is the whole of our understanding of God say about it, for example? Was our whole understanding of what it means to be human say about it? Those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what lenses do we hold up, right? That we're conscious of and allowing to have place in the way we live our lives, and what lenses are we not conscious of too in all of that? Well, and I say that just having had different family voices and stuff give me input into how I see the world. And also church family voices too, and so all of that sort of influences it.
So that sense of holding up a mirror as well as we have these conversations to ourselves. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, that idea of creating a space for us to ask those questions on those big things, you know, like everything from race, poverty, sex to meaning and metaphysics, a space to ask those questions, which I think all religious communities should provide that space. I don't know if we all have successfully done that, but I think that's a real fundamental role of religious communities. And so I see this as a form of that. You know, in the United Church of Canada, and in a lot of mainline Protestant traditions, like the three of us are a part of, we have this history of the word, the idea that our spiritual practice, I think, is very extroverted, very talking things out and working it through, whether it's a preacher at a pulpit or conversations over coffee time. You know, that those in itself are a spiritual practice that's grounded in certainly United Church's tradition, um, and and so that idea of, okay, well, how do we reflect on these? Well, we're learning to meditate and pray and do some more internal work. That's a good one, but our tradition aligns with these extroverted these extroverted practices, these ways of talking it out. And so so how do we reflect on these big questions? Well, let's talk it out and work through it out loud. And I say that as a very big introvert. So I don't know how I ended up in the Christian. Well, I know exactly how I ended up in the Christian tradition. I was born into it. But yeah. So I think it's tied into the roots of where I come from, anyway.
I think what you were saying too before, Tim, about everybody's seeking meaning. There are pieces that everybody's bound to sort of touch on in their lives, whether it's questions about sex, questions about death, and all those things. I think there are touchstones for us, regardless of what our faith upbringing may have been. And I mean, I look forward to that kind of delving into curiosity in these conversations as well, and hope to stimulate some conversation with people who might hear this and also be wondering about that stuff as well, and then how to live with those things too, because we've ended up creating shame and guilt, and then also sort of weird ways of packaging what is joy sometimes too, based on religious practice. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to that kind of conversation, hoping that it comes back to us in some way too.
I'm kind of wondering how it might come out, or how it might, be more forward and less coming up a little bit as we go. What we think is most important in this. And Tim, you already named curiosity, and Tyler, you had said earlier not having all the answers necessarily. That's not our goal in this, is to, oh, this is the right theological answer, and there we go. You named your privilege earlier, Tyler, and I'm hoping, what I really hope that we can bring to talking about these things is a both deeply rooted in our faith traditions, but also deeply open and radical approach to looking at these questions, so we can look at them with a deeply just or a deep care about justice, a deep care about the thriving of all life, right? So that they're grounded more in these things that we care about, healthy ways, right? Such as curiosity, openness, being aware of privilege, being aware of injustice, and caring about justice and people's thriving. That can be what comes first for us, as opposed to, and I think it does, which is why we're doing this together, as opposed to a lot of things that I encountered that are good, but they put first, say, an academic perspective, or they put first a doctrinally correct perspective, or they put first a historically correct perspective, right? So I'm excited about talking about these things together in a way that we can, how can I say this without being like, yay, us? but that's what I hope we can really bring to it, that is different than some of what I've experienced in other times and places in my life. It's maybe different values are at the front.
Yeah, I think that sums it up quite nicely, actually. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to cap it off. Well, I've already done it now. Cap it off with, well, here's my 2 cents on that. Yes, I agree. I think that's the best way of just like, yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks be to God for editing.
That's right.
For Tyler.
Yeah. All right, and so as we go today, may your hearts be open to where you truly come from, and may that bring forth in you universal questions out of the depth of your own experience, inspiring tremendous creativity and tremendous hope. Amen.